The Liske Family Halloween Massacre. Devon Griffin was just 16 years old on Halloween 2010 when a living nightmare changed his life forever. On that bright Sunday morning, he returned to his family's farmhouse in rural Ohio after church, expecting to find everyone preparing for the holiday. Instead, he was greeted by an eerie silence. The autumn sunlight filtered through the windows onto an unnaturally still and quiet home. Devon called out, "Mom, Dad, Derek?" But no answer came. At first, nothing seemed obviously wrong. The house was simply quiet. Devon shrugged it off and headed upstairs to his room, figuring his mother, Susan, and his stepfather, Bill, might still be asleep after the previous night's festivities. His older brother, Derek, was a night owl and often slept late, so Devon assumed he was in his room as well. With the house to himself, Devon settled in and played some video games, enjoying the extra free time before anyone else woke up. An hour or two passed. By early afternoon, the unsettling silence in the house became impossible to ignore. Normally, the sounds of the family bustling about would fill the home by now. The clatter of dishes in the kitchen, or the murmur of the TV. But there was nothing. A creeping feeling of dread began to take root in Devon's stomach. He paused his game, suddenly aware of just how alone he felt. Heart thudding in his chest, Devon decided to check on his family. He made his way to the master bedroom where his mom and stepdad slept. The door was slightly ajar, and he gently pushed it open. Inside, the room was dim, curtains drawn against the midday sun. He could make out the shape of his mother and stepfather lying in bed together under the thick maroon comforter. They appeared to still be asleep. Devon let out a small, nervous laugh. It was odd for them to be in bed at this hour. "Mom?" he called softly as he approached the bed. Susan didn't stir. Devon rounded the bed to his mother's side. One of her feet was poking out from under the blanket, hanging at an unnatural angle off the edge of the mattress. With trembling fingers, he reached out and tapped her leg lightly. "Hey, wake up," he said, voice quivering. There was no response. A coppery smell hung faintly in the air. Devon's eyes darted over the bed. Something was very wrong. He tugged down the comforter a few inches from his mother's face and felt his blood turn to ice. The pillow beneath her head was soaked with a dark red stain. Susan's hair, usually neat and blonde, was matted with blood. Her face was partially turned away, and she wasn't moving at all. Bill lay beside her in the same stillness, the bedding pulled up to his neck. Red spatter dotted the headboard and wall like a macabre decoration. For a split second, Devon's mind fought to make sense of the horrific scene. This has to be a prank. It's Halloween. This can't be real, he thought wildly. Maybe they had staged an elaborate Halloween trick to scare him. But as the metallic scent hit his nose and the reality of the gore settled in, Devon staggered back. This was no prank. This was real blood, real death. Devon's scream caught in his throat. Instead, a strangled gasp escaped as he stumbled out of the bedroom. He felt as if the walls were closing in, his vision narrowing with panic. He had to get out of the house now. What if the killer was still here? The thought propelled him down the stairs 2 at a time. He burst out the front door into the daylight, gulping in fresh air as a wave of nausea and fear washed over him. Hands shaking uncontrollably. Devon fumbled for his phone. In his shock and confusion, instead of dialing 911 immediately, he called his Aunt Lori, who lived nearby. When Lori answered, Devon's words tumbled out in a hysterical rush. "They're dead. There's blood. Mom and Dad. There's so much blood," he managed to choke out. At first, his aunt couldn't understand him. She urged him to slow down, but Devon was crying and incoherent. All he could say was, "It's like a Halloween horror scene. I think they're dead." Realizing the gravity of the situation, Lori hung up and immediately dialed 911, relaying to the dispatcher what her nephew had found. Within minutes, sirens pierced the quiet country afternoon. Devon stood outside the house, unable to bring himself to re-enter, pacing and weeping as flashes of the bloody bedroom replayed in his mind. He kept hoping he might wake up from this nightmare. Sheriff's deputies arrived and cautiously swept the house. Devon watched from the yard as officers went inside with guns drawn, uncertain if a murderer might still be lurking within. Yellow crime scene tape soon went up around the property, and neighbors began to gather at a distance, drawn by the commotion on what should have been a peaceful Halloween afternoon. Devon felt a numb detachment, as though he were watching someone else's life unfold. When the police emerged, their faces were grim. One officer approached Devon gently. In a hushed voice, he confirmed the unimaginable. His mother, Susan, and stepfather Bill were gone, brutally slain in their own bed. Devon broke down, sinking to his knees in the grass. But the nightmare was not over. The deputy continued, explaining that they had found a third victim, Devon's brother, 23-year-old Derek, upstairs in his room. Derek too was dead, attacked while he slept. It was a complete massacre. Devon's entire family had been wiped out in one merciless sweep. As Devon rocked in anguish, an investigator began asking if he knew of anyone who would want to hurt the family. Through his shock, Devon remembered something when he had briefly stopped home early that morning to grab clothes for church. He had seen his stepbrother, 24-year-old William B.J. Liske, lurking around the house. B.J. was Bill's son from a previous marriage and had a troubled history, including mental illness and violent outbursts. The realization struck Devon like a physical blow. B.J. must have been the one who did this. The family member he had passed in the hallway that morning was not just visiting. He was fleeing the crime scene after murdering their loved ones. Police radios crackled with this new information. Almost immediately, an alert went out for B.J. Liske. By the time the sun set on Halloween, the alleged killer, Devon's own stepbrother, was in custody. Officers found B.J. that evening hiding out at a distant family hunting cabin over 150 miles away, trying to lay low. The same son that Susan had helped raise and welcome into their home had repaid that kindness with unimaginable violence. In the days that followed, the grim details came to light. Investigators determined that B.J. had snapped sometime in the early morning hours, entering the house and shooting or bludgeoning the family as they slept. Susan, Bill, and Derek all suffered severe trauma to the head. The crime was so brutal that one responding officer said the bedroom looked like a scene from a horror movie, except it was terrifyingly real. The community reeled in shock at the tragedy. Friends and relatives recalled that B.J. had long been a troubled soul, in and out of legal trouble, prone to anger, but no one expected this level of savagery. For Devon, the horror was deeply personal. He could barely comprehend that his own stepbrother, someone who had sat at the dinner table with them, had annihilated his family on the one day meant for spooky fun. Halloween would never be the same for him. It would forever be the anniversary of the day his home turned into a house of horrors. Today, Devon carries the trauma of that Halloween deep inside. The images of blood and loss are burned into his memory. William B.J. Liske eventually pleaded guilty to the murders, spared a trial by his confession. Justice was served, but there was no happy ending. B.J. later took his own life in prison, and 3 innocent lives were still gone. Every year, when late October rolls around, the rest of the world enjoys costumes and candy. But Devon is transported back to that silent house and the dreadful discovery he made. The Liske Family Halloween Massacre is a chilling reminder that true evil can lurk within one's own home, turning a beloved holiday into a lifelong nightmare.